Moms for Liberty really worked miracles.
We have a crisis in America in public education. This is the future of our kids and our country.
You are joyful warriors.
And we are just getting started. Good morning. Welcome to the Fire of Liberty show. I'm Tina Deskovich, CEO and co-founder of Moms for Liberty. This is a show where we bring you moms and dads and folks from the front line of this culture war that we're having in America right now. So many crazy things are happening in our schools, continue to happen in our schools across the country. As we said in the opening statement, we're in a crisis in public education in America. And today we have Tatiana Pena, our state ambassador from the state of Arizona, with us today. Her story is remarkable, just like everyone we've shared so far. And what's fascinating about our moms is all of their stories are so unique. I think this is episode 8 or 9 at this point, and every story has been individual and unique. And today's story is going to start off as we talk about a hat. Just a hat. Mm-hmm. So tell us, Tatiana, about, we'll talk about you in just a minute, but I think, you brought your hat with you.
I'm gonna wear the hat.
The Moms for Liberty hat. And let's talk about that hat a little bit. Why is it a controversial hat that you like? Tell us about that.
I didn't think it was a controversial hat. So about a few months ago, my family and I, we're in Arizona. And we decided to go make a trip to the Grand Canyon. We had a family member visiting from out of the country. And so it's like, we got to take you to the Grand Canyon. And I decided to bring my hat along because I was like, wouldn't it be wonderful to take a great epic photo at the Grand Canyon representing Moms for Liberty? And so here I was, beautiful background, the Grand Canyon. And I put the hat on and my mom took the photo. She's not a professional photographer or anything. I just smiled, took the photo, and I sent it to you. And then from there.
Oh, so hold on. So you text it to me.
Yeah.
Which chapter leaders and ambassadors do from time to time. And usually, I put them in the queue to be shared on social. But I was like sitting on my couch and I thought, oh, this is such a cute picture. And it's a good way to promote our hat for hat sales out of our merch store, momsforliberty.org/store. And so I didn't put any thought into it. I threw it up, I think, just on Facebook. I don't even know that we put it on any other social. And I don't even remember what I posted, but I was like, here's Tatiana, our state ambassador from Arizona, and she's sporting our hat. Get your hat here. It was like not even a big deal at all. And how did this go for you?
Well, the funny thing is, I went on with my day. And remember, I was wearing the hat not just during the photo. I wore the hat that entire day as I was at the Grand Canyon. So we have people from all over the country at the Grand Canyon, different countries, right? And not a peep, no comments, nothing, no bad looks or anything like that. But apparently the entire world was falling apart on the internet with the hat photo. And I mean, we got a lot of attention. I mean, the exact views and the amount of comments.
Yeah, it had like 500,000 people saw this photo. I don't know what made people so angry about it. I checked it this morning. I went back. Was this a month ago, 2 months ago?
Yeah.
It was a while ago now. I went back this morning just because I knew we were going to talk about it a little bit. And it had 16,000 comments on a Facebook post about you in that hat. And 99.9% of them are just hate-filled.
Oh, yeah.
So do you remember what some of them said? Like, what were some of the worst ones?
So clearly my name has Russian origin.
Yeah, you're a Russian asset.
But I'm not Russian. I'm actually Latina. Both my parents are from, Central America. My dad from Honduras, my mom from Costa Rica.
And I think you look Hispanic to me. So They were like, she's a Russian asset. Nice name. There was tons of comments.
Yeah, they were calling me Russian asset. They were saying I'm a white supremacist. I'm clearly not white.
Yeah.
And I grew up in the hood and everything. So it's like, they were just saying the most crazy things. That I was like, anti-LGBT, all these crazy things that they just made up because, they have these stereotypes of what Moms for Liberty is. And I'll just say I was proud. I was proud to be the one taking that, the hits, because I know what our movement's about, and our movement's about parental rights, and it's about protecting our babies. And you have to be brave in those times. And so for me, I was getting a kick out of it. I was like, wow, this is incredible. And it just made me more stronger, more, just confirming that this is the right thing for me to do.
So this might be the first episode where the guest makes me cry. Right?
The tissues are over there.
I know.
Tina.
I got the tissues over here to give to the guests because it seems like most of our guests have cried, some a lot. But you just took me aback by saying that even with all that 16,000 hate rage filled comments, you were proud to still wear the hat. And
Absolutely.
that's such a courageous thing to say because
Mhm.
so many people in America do not have that courage right now. And gosh, I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
I want to dig into your story a little bit because you have a great story. So tell us a little bit about you. We know you're full of courage like that. We just got out of the first couple of minutes of this interview, but just, your background, kids, family, what's your story?
So I grew up very shy. I'm from South Phoenix, in Arizona, which is also known as the Hood.
I was just going to say for those of us that aren't from Arizona,
Yeah.
Phoenix is a beautiful place with cactuses and,
Yeah.
and dry, not so humid heat, but tell us about South Phoenix.
So South Phoenix, I would say, is absolutely beautiful too. We have the mountains right there, but it is traditionally a lower income community. It was like the first community where, Black families were actually, like for a long time, that was the only place they were able to buy property. And so, during some of the history of Arizona is that, there was a little bit of racism, obviously, in our history, but South Phoenix was where everyone went to, immigrants, the Black population and whatnot. And for the longest time, it was predominantly Black and Latino. And I would say maybe about 15 years ago, developers came and started building some nicer properties. And so we have a lot more diverse backgrounds coming into Phoenix, especially people coming from out of state. They want to buy a more affordable home and have a more affordable state. And so South Phoenix is one of those prominent places. But being born and raised in South Phoenix and coming from immigrant parents, like I said, my dad's from Honduras, my mom's from Costa Rica. Both of my parents came here, kind of late teens, college years. My dad came to study violin at ASU. My mom came with her family, and her family were actually refugees coming from Costa Rica. There's a story behind that one too. And both my parents were public school teachers. That's what they decided
in
to do.
Arizona, in Phoenix?
In Phoenix, in South Phoenix, and actually in the school district that I now represent on the school board.
Hey, we haven't got to that yet.
Yeah.
Hold on. Don't give people, don't give away your story.
Yeah. So that's where I was raised. Like I said, my dad, violinist, he became a mariachi. I was raised up in a musical home.
Hold up. He plays in, I'm going to say it wrong. I'm going to say it all American. Was it a mariachi like band?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So I'm just going to break for a second. Did you see the post that we put up? I don't think we put it on our social media. I think I just put it on my personal. It was in DC this past week.
Mm-hmm.
And the winners of the high school Texas mariachi competition, the state champions, were in our hotel.
That's awesome.
And, I've experienced very little mariachi, maybe in a Mexican restaurant or something. It's usually kind of overplayed and fine. And I've never really loved it. But Lisa on our team and Colette on our team were with me in the lobby. We had just come back from dinner and kids were coming down in their pajamas, wet hair. They had backstory. They'd just been swimming or whatever with instruments. Like 50 kids.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just coming down to the lobby, a harp, guitars, violins, you name it. And they were all gathering around. And then another kid comes down and they start playing for him. It's obviously all in Spanish. And so the three of us are, what are they saying? Then a girl or a woman is standing next to him. And we're like, are they getting engaged? We have no idea what the words are. It was his 18th birthday and he was part of their band and they were celebrating him and it was beautiful. Then their parents started gathering around and Lisa and I and Colette started asking questions. What is this about? And then they told us they're the champions. And so then the kids wanted to show us what they can really do. And they pulled out in their pajamas in the lobby of a Marriott courtyard a full performance. There wasn't a dry eye. It was so beautiful, so powerful, so overwhelming to see the youth of today engaged in beauty and heritage and culture with great amount of talent. We were all moved to tears. And so I don't want to take away from your story, but the beauty of your dad coming here to play that music, and then for me just experiencing it for the first time, I feel like in a real way just a week ago, I love this. And I've met your father. I think we had
Yeah.
dinner when I was out there one time.
Yeah.
And he's a great man. I really like him.
You basically described how it was for me with my father, because he was the band director of the youth mariachi in our area,
Really?
and he recruited my four siblings, all of us, to we all picked up an instrument.
What did you play? Or what do you play?
I play the guitar, and I play the vihuela, which is a little small guitar with a humpback, the loud one.
Okay.
It's kind of like a tenor guitar.
Uh-huh.
And then I sang. And so, yeah, he said, this is what I do, my full-time job. I have to go and do after-school mariachi for the school, because he not only taught full-time as a music teacher, but he did the after-school mariachi program. He's like, you guys are going to go join the mariachi, and I'm going to train all of you. And so we would do competitions too.
Really?
Yeah. So, and that is actually a thing. That's a huge thing within the young Hispanic communities, is that they get involved in mariachis. They practice. They perform, and they go to conferences, and there's competitions, and it's so inspiring. And yes, it's absolutely beautiful. And so that's been a part of my life, that, mariachi tradition. And it's funny because, I'm not Mexican. I mean, I found out a few years ago, I have like maybe 1% like indigenous Mexican in me.
You did one of those DNA tests.
Yeah. But my dad, when he went to ASU to study music, there was actually a mariachi, like this guy trying to recruit musicians in Arizona. This is like really, really early 80s. So he was trying to recruit musicians at ASU, the Conservatory of Music. And the closest thing to Mexican you could find was my Honduran violinist dad. He's like, well, you look the part and you speak the language, so let's train you. And so, yeah, that's how that became part of my dad's life. That's how it became part of my life. And I hope that my children will continue it, when they get to that point where they're old enough to do that. But yeah, it's interesting that you experience it. I'm like, yeah, that's a big thing in Texas. It's a big thing in Arizona and New Mexico, in several states where you see these youth mariachi groups competing. And yeah, it really makes a difference in those kids' lives.
So he was an educator, and your mother was an educator also.
Mhm.
What type of teacher was she?
She was a second grade teacher.
Oh gosh, bless her heart.
Yeah.
Her heart.
Yeah, and she was right before that third grade threshold, and so they would give her a lot of the children that were struggling. She had, obviously, we're in a predominantly ELL, or English language learning area, and so she had a lot of children that were immigrant families, and having to teach them English. I mean, she gave her all.
And so you were telling me earlier about your grandfather, mother's father, father's
Mhm.
father, which is your mother's father.
Mhm.
And so he brought her here. Is that right?
Yeah, that's a really fun story. So my grandfather was actually the founder of the Anti-Narcotics Police Division in Costa Rica. So prior to his efforts, there was nothing done to combat the drug war, the cartels. And he had gotten some professional training in the U.S. I believe he also went to like Israel. He did all this special training, and then he decided to start this anti-narcotics division in Costa Rica. And for anyone who knows about Costa Rica and how safe that country has been, well, a lot of it was due to having that police division. And at one point, they had a very strong impact, and they were able to find a bigger fish. Is that how I would describe it? A bigger fish in that system. And his life was being threatened because that individual was actually they died while in police custody. And so with his family being threatened, his life being threatened, he actually petitioned for to come to the United States and to seek refuge. And so he was given that permission, and he what I was told is that they packed up the van and they started driving north, and they came to Phoenix, and they settled in South Phoenix. And my grandfather never served in law enforcement in the U.S. He kept that very quiet, and for a long time he was afraid to tell anyone about his history because he was afraid that they were going to threaten his family back in Costa Rica even. And now obviously my grandfather has passed away, but all my grandparents have passed away. But that legacy that he left with us meant a lot. And I remember as a child him sharing with me about the importance of law and order, stay away from drugs, that sort of thing, any drug. Like, he was really strict about that. And then also protecting your country. Like, he knew that Costa Rica was safe because he set it up in a position to, combat those traffickers, those cartels. But he was seeing what was happening in other Central American countries, and he was, this is years ago, and he was telling me this could happen in the U.S. Your country can be, influenced by these people because they have so much money and so much power. And so that had a huge impact on me on respecting my country. And then, of course, my grandparents and my parents, all of them raised me loving this country, loving what was given to them, respecting it, respecting its laws, and of course, traditional Latino values too. And so it's all about faith, family, and freedom when you really think about it. So I was just really blessed to come from that background. And another thing that I learned from my grandfather is just not be afraid. I know for him, he had to do what he did with the family, right, to bring them to the United States. But where do we go from here? If we lose this country, if we lose our rights, if we lose our parental rights, if I lose the ability to raise my children in a country that I was raised in, I mean, where do I go? I don't have anywhere else to go. And when I was, when I had completed my studies in college, I did move to Germany. I lived there for 2 years to kind of see, like, oh, I want to try something differently. It wasn't the same. So really, the United States, this is it. We are so blessed.
We're the last hope. I think we've had a few leaders say,
Yeah.
we're the last hope for democracy, for our republic, really for freedom in the world. And we've spread that throughout the world in a lot of places. But if we don't continue to stand on that hill and hold that banner, where else can people go? And so would you say, I guess is my question, that your sense of patriotism and love for freedom and love for this country and your drive to defend it comes from maybe your grandfather and his experiences that he's passed down? It sounds that way.
Yeah, my entire family, like both my parents and my grandparents, I never felt like I was being raised by foreigners. I always felt like I was being raised by patriots.
They love the country.
Oh man, you got me. I told you I was going to cry. I remember when my grandparents became citizens and how proud they were of that moment.
So they didn't become citizens right away then, because obviously if you were alive, were you there for their ceremony?
I wasn't there for their ceremony, but I remember how happy they were.
And I got the tissues for you.
Yeah. I'm gonna do a outfit change here, but yeah, no, they instilled that pride.
Why do you think this is so emotional for you?
Because they're watching over me.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so we'll transition out of your grandparents. Your parents both became teachers, and then you come along, and you're raised in South Phoenix, a relatively humble area.
Yeah, I went to school in the district where my parents taught. I started school there. This was before when you had to go to your assigned school in the neighborhood that you were living in.
There was no such thing as Title I, I'm guessing, at this point. Maybe there was. You're much younger than I am, but whether it was categorized as Title I and getting federal funds, it was a poor school. Would you say that? Yeah, underserved school.
Absolutely. Actually, the main school that I ended up at was my dad's school, and that school was a very, very difficult school. In fact, I kind of give it credit for giving me like that hood in me, right? And it's funny because so at that time we were living in one house, and then my parents ended up kind of upgrading to a different house in South Phoenix.
The
And
American dream, moving on up.
yeah, and you imagine, being two public school teachers, they didn't really make that much money, but they were doing what they could, raising 4 kids. And so the newer house that they moved into was actually just outside the district, but still South Phoenix. And so it was in the neighboring district that belonged to Tempe, which was not South Phoenix. Was like, oh, wow, Tempe, you're like, but the school that we were assigned to was still kind of in a poorer area of Tempe. It was actually in like a Native American, the Yaqui Reservation is in this little town, Guadalupe, which is right next to South Phoenix and Tempe. And so that was the school that I went to for 4th grade and 5th grade. But I remember it was a huge upgrade for us. I'm going from like this school in South Phoenix, Palmdale, and it's no longer around, and then I go to Frank in Guadalupe, and the first thing I'm thinking during the playground is, why isn't anyone getting in a fight?
Oh gosh.
Yeah, like I was so used to like playground fights, kids getting bloody. That was normal. That was really normal to see that growing up. And so when I went to Frank, it was a bit of a culture shock. But at the same time, I was like, okay, this is good, and I understood why my parents did what they did, why they're like, yes, we teach where we teach, but we want to be able to provide better for you guys. And so we were very fortunate that that's where, I was able to go to school after that. And then high school was actually on the other side of the mountain as well. But yeah, that was the experience I had. And even though I was not continuing in Roosevelt, the district where my parents were at, I still visited their classrooms on a regular basis. I had a lot of interactions with them, and during summer school, I would be there visiting them as well and helping them with their classes. And so it was always part of me. It was always part of me.
So then you decide you want to be a teacher at some point, and you go to I called it Teachers College, I think earlier, and you said it's the College of Education. And I said, oh, okay, I'm so sorry. So you decide to go to college, get a degree, and become a teacher.
Yes.
Obviously, because you were inspired by your parents and the work that they did.
Yeah. So
and what was that like, the College of Education?
Well, that was one of the things that the reason why I decided to do that is because I wanted to make a difference in my community. Obviously, education has a big part to do with it.
So your plan was to go to get an education degree and come back to your community and teach.
Yeah.
Okay. That's, I think, very admirable.
Yeah. So I went to the College of Education, studied at ASU, did my undergrad in multilingual, multicultural education. So kind of following in my mom's footsteps, which was to be a bilingual teacher if necessary to help children that are learning English for the first time. And it was kind of interesting. I mean, I was not raised in a political family at all, right? We did not talk politics, even though my grandpa obviously knew a lot. But I get to the College of Education and I'm like waiting to learn how to be a teacher. And instead we're talking about politics. At that time they were
What years was this? Like what year average? You don't have to give us the exact year. I mean, when were you in college? Because people think this is a really recent thing, that teachers' colleges have gone all woke and crazy and political. But what you're telling me is when you were there. So
I graduated, I think, in 2007
from college.
Yeah.
So
it was prior to that.
Okay.
It was prior to that. But they were, at that time, Bush was president, and they were complaining about the government getting involved in education.
Yeah, No Child Left Behind.
They hated No Child Left Behind, which I understand, right? But they were complaining about the government getting involved in education, and they were so anti-Bush and everything. And I was like, okay, how do I teach a kid how to read? And my one literacy class that they made us take was ridiculous. It was this, I don't even remember what the theory was, like what was the actual title of the theory, but they wanted us to take, per student, sit down with that student, have them read a storybook, and then record the child while they're reading the storybook. And that wasn't all. We were supposed to type out the storybook on another paper so that we could notate every mistake that the child made while reading, so that we could analyze those mistakes, so that we could help teach that child afterwards. I'm like, that was one kid. I don't know how many hours I had to spend for one child, and I'm going to be in a classroom with 25 students. This is unrealistic. It wasn't anything about like teaching proper grammar, teaching phonics or the phonics rules out there. It was nothing like that. It was just it, and I mean, another thing that I noticed when I was in the College of Education, at one point, because I didn't know any difference on like, okay, this is only for public school educators, and so at one point, I just innocently asked, well, what about private schools? And it was like as if I asked them to like cut off their arm or something. It was
Yeah.
like don't bring up private schools. And I didn't understand. And so they were instilling me this hate towards any other educational options out there. And so I graduated from the College of Education. Obviously I did my time. And then
I did my time.
and then I went and luckily got hired by Roosevelt. And I started teaching, and they put me in a kindergarten classroom.
So Roosevelt, to be clear, is where your dad taught?
And my mom.
Where your mom and your dad taught, and where you went to school for a few years. And in your South Phoenix, in the poor community, basically.
Yeah. And then that's where I ended up starting my teaching career, and they put me in kindergarten.
With no actual skills to teach? I mean, is that what you just said? Like they didn't train you in how to teach phonics and how to teach kids to actually read. You get your teaching degree certificate.
Yeah.
Do you have to take a test in Arizona to be certified as a teacher? You were able to pass that, I guess, if you were teaching. Okay.
Yeah. And then
but still never learned how to teach phonics to children. Okay.
They didn't teach me anything about that. They didn't even teach me properly how to teach math either, or any of the subjects. It was just, I don't know. I don't know what that College of Education was. It probably has changed since.
You're giving them credit that may not be due. People wonder why kids aren't learning and why kids can't read in this country right now. We know that only a third of American fourth graders as a whole are reading on grade level. And so I would say it's probably consistent. Your school is probably the standard across the country and why kids can't read. Anyway, so you're in the classroom now. And did the school or the district provide tools that you needed? Now are they like, here's some phonics workbooks that you can take to your students? How did that work out for you?
No, that was another interesting thing. So at that time they had a horrible curriculum, had the worst photos you've ever, like pictures. I mean, you're talking about kindergartners, you want to see good pictures, you want to see lots of colors, you want to see characters, something exciting, right? No, it was like dull colors. The storylines, or everything was just not even phonics based. In fact, this reading program totally shunned phonics. They didn't want phonics. They just wanted like sight reading based, like where you have to memorize. I remember like in one of the first lessons, they introduced the word water, and I'm like, why would you do that? Like that's not how you start literacy with a child, right? And even though I didn't have actual training, I remember when my teachers had taught me to read, and they did do phonics-based training. And so that's what helped me learn how to read. And so I was like, okay, well, let me go look in the closet here. And we had in the school next to my classroom was actually one of the closets where they put all the curriculums in. So I went in there, and, I didn't ask permission. I went in there and I found one of the previous reading programs that I saw was phonics based, that they would have like their spelling words for every week, and they had word families and everything. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to use this, and I'm going to use the word families to kind of start teaching phonics from what I remember learning. And so a lot of it was just playing it by ear. Now, another thing with that reading program is that, all the materials that they were asking for us as teachers to prepare were just unrealistic. You're like, oh, prepare all this for for this activity that you're going to do during reading, and then this other activity. And by the way, the kids are going to have to use their scissors, and they're going to have to cut, paste and all this stuff. And I'm like, these are kindergartners. That means I'm going to be doing everything. And it was so completely unrealistic what they put on us as teachers to be able to try to teach children. And it was expected that we used that curriculum. So I would be sneaking in this other phonics stuff to try to help my babies. I call them my babies, right? To try to help them out because I wanted them to be more successful. And I did see that did help those children, because this other program I knew wasn't going to work. Another thing that was crazy, within 2 years, the district was now purchasing another reading curriculum.
I think that's a common problem everywhere, including my own district where I was a school board member. I would go on a listening tour and listen to teachers at different schools, and constant complaints of, we just figured out how to teach the last curriculum, and now you guys have purchased, a new curriculum, and then you have a new idea, and then we have to bring in new trainers and spend all this money again. And so, common problem in education. I'm not surprised there. We're going to take a 1-minute break to talk about Moms for Liberty's National Summit. We're going to have a little video, and we come back, we're going to expand a little bit more on the literacy rate in Arizona with Hispanic students. And it is in sad shape. 18% statewide of Hispanic students can read on grade level. And unfortunately, Arizona is not alone in these dismal stats and statistics about children. And so, but first, let's just hear this little message about our National Summit coming up in October.
Elena, what state are you from?
New York.
Hawaii.
I'm from Texas, Washington. I have my kids actually with me to do the march.
Wherever I go, odds are there is a Moms for Liberty group or a whole tribe in the room sounding off loud and proud.
And you could see the passion here because it's about supporting kids.
Pledge to each other that we will live like men and women who are determined to remain free.
I'm for parental rights all the way.
Welcome back to the Fire of Liberty show. I'm Tina Deskovich, CEO and co-founder of Moms for Liberty. Today, we're talking to Tatiana Pena. She is our state ambassador for the great state of Arizona. She is a mom of 5. I don't think we've even talked about that yet. You have 5 children, and she is a former teacher at a Title I school where she went to school. Her parents taught at that school, and we were just left off before the break, talking a little bit about your experience teaching kindergarten in this Title I school right out of teachers college, which you were ill prepared for. No offense to you, but your school did not prepare you to teach phonics or to teach these kids to read at all. And when we left, I had just dropped the stat that 18% of Hispanic students in Arizona can read on grade level, and almost half the students in Arizona are Hispanic. And when you hear those stats, being a Hispanic woman with children who are Hispanic, you're all of Hispanic heritage, what are your thoughts on that?
It's unacceptable. That's just absolutely unacceptable that our community we're suffering and we're not getting the education that we should be. And when you see also, it's interesting going back to the mariachi thing. I had the experiences of performing in the most interesting spots. And so I would even go perform in the juvenile detention center.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so we'd go perform around Cinco de Mayo for the juvenile detention center. And you'd see all of these young Hispanic children coming to, and they were so excited because of course they're in juvie. There's nothing fun about juvie, but that's where I saw, that's my community. We're failing them. They're that young. And so that's what I think about when I see those numbers. I see those kids, that they deserved a better future. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. So to make a change, make a difference. And, I see that the way we've been doing it, the system has not been working in their favor. I talked about when I started teaching in public. Later on, I taught in private once I married my husband. I was living in California. And there I saw a school that charged a lot of money for their tuition, but had the cheapest materials ever to teach reading. It was all phonics based. All phonics. They taught me all the rules of how to teach children how to read in English. Everything. Did you know OUGH makes 6 different sounds? There's 6 different sounds you can memorize for any word that has OUGH. When you teach children these basic rules, they can start reading so early and they read fast. And then you also teach them how to understand what they're reading. And so, like I said, in the teacher college, they didn't want me to even identify the possibility of private schools. But they're doing something right in some other systems, and we need to be willing to see what are they doing right that we can incorporate in our public systems. Because
so why, poor kids in a Title I school, why do they get different curriculum than quote unquote the rich kids in a private school? Why is that happening? I know you don't necessarily have the answer, but it's a question I think we as a society need to be asking ourselves. And so you served in the school, you taught in the school because it's important to you. And now you're back in Phoenix. You're a mom of 5, and you decide, I just can't sit here and do nothing. And so you run for school board. And your tenacity is like nobody I've ever seen. So you're a registered Republican, I believe, right? Obviously a conservative woman.
Yeah.
You are not just a member of Moms for Liberty, you're our state ambassador leader of Moms for Liberty. And you live in a blue, predominantly Democrat school district.
Yeah.
And you decide you're going to run for school board.
Yeah.
What makes you think that you can win? Like, you don't run to lose. I'm guessing you run because you want to serve and you think you can win. Did you think out the gate that you could possibly win in a blue district?
Yeah, I did, but it was a long game strategy. So I actually started in 2020 by running for state rep in my community.
Okay.
Because my husband and I had moved back into South Phoenix, and I was like, I'm not going to have anyone that I can vote for. Like, no one here represents.
Where's your husband from?
He's from the Bay Area, California.
So how'd you convince him to move to South Phoenix?
Actually, he was the one that convinced me.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, because and it was interesting. He found a little neighborhood that I didn't know existed that had just beautiful property, and it was right around the corner from my parents, and it's like, you know what? Let's go do this. And we just felt it was the right thing to do. And one of the concerns that I had was, like, I'm moving to an area where the schools aren't the best, right? I don't know how it's going to be for my family. It's like, well, then do something about it. Do something about your community. Don't run away. A lot of people from South Phoenix, once they find success, they leave it and they don't turn back. And I felt like, no, I need to do something. I need to give back to my community. That was always my desire since I was a kid. It's like, how can I help my community? And so I first decided to run for state rep. And that was in 2020 during COVID and everything. And so I just felt inspired to do certain things. Like, I made a little logo with a heart. It was red and it was like a stop sign. You just see it everywhere you went. And so I say that I heart attacked the South Side. That's what I did, because I just wanted the community to feel love. Because for those of you in Arizona, I'm pretty sure you'll see these reports that say, oh, this crime happened in South Phoenix. Sometimes the crime doesn't even happen in South Phoenix, but they'll just, say it was South Phoenix, even though it was, a neighboring district near it, or a neighboring city. So anyway, so I wanted to show that love. At one point, I was really creative also, and this is what I would recommend for anyone running for office. Think of ways to be memorable to your audience. And so with the toilet paper shortage, I bought toilet paper rolls, and I put, like, wishing you health and happiness.
So how did you find, if there's a toilet paper shortage, how did you get all these toilet paper rolls?
Well, one of my supporters and volunteers, she had a business and she had access as a business owner to get
the rolls, the rolls after the toilet paper is used. And so what'd you do with them?
I put, wishing you a little paper that I put around them, wishing you health and happiness or love, a heart, love TP. Because
that's your initials.
Those are my initials.
It's clever. Very clever.
Yeah. And so to this day, I still have people, it's like, I remember my toilet paper you left at my door, because you couldn't really talk to people at that time. And so I would just, leave them a roll. And
you didn't just leave the little cardboard. You left a whole roll of toilet paper.
Yeah.
They could, like a gift.
I gave them toilet paper.
And during that time period, a roll of toilet paper was a gift. I love that.
So I did that. And then, of course, my whole thing was hearts. So I bought a ton of little Valentines, those little heart lollipops. And I would put a little business card with my information, a little ribbon. And so I'd give them a little Valentine, just spreading love. So these are ways that I was memorable. And so I didn't win in 2020. I ran in 2022 again for the same position, didn't win. And by the way, I was pregnant with my fourth baby when I ran in 2020. So she was due in December. The election obviously was in the beginning of November. I was really, really big in pregnancy. It was a great exercise for being pregnant. And then in 2022, I was pregnant with my fifth baby.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And another thing on top of that, my husband was serving as our local bishop for our congregation. So I had a lot on my plate, but it didn't keep me from being willing to go out there and serve the community. And I'm very thankful for the support of my husband and also the support of my parents that lived nearby and obviously many volunteers that helped out. But after 2022.
So you lost in 22.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's when I was like, you know what? I know what I need to do. I need to run for the school district. That's where it really begins, is in the district.
Back to your original passion with your parents being teachers and you being a teacher and worried about literacy. And so you decide to run in the school district where you taught, your parents taught, you went to school where they weren't teaching phonics 20 years ago or whatever that time frame is. And the reading rate is 18% for Hispanic students statewide. And what was the experience running for school board like for you? But now you're involved in Moms for Liberty. You're the state ambassador. You're tied to Moms for Liberty. And how did this play out for you in a blue area?
Well, that's where I saw
Did you really think you were going to win? So you've lost 2 elections. You decided you want to run for school board. You know the makeup of the community. You know who's registered what. Did you think you're going to win this time? You're like, now I got this. I can do this. Or did you just want to run for the experience of running?
I actually, from looking at the data from previous races with the school district, I was able to identify that there was a very strong possibility that I could win.
Okay.
And I knew that if I felt the pressure of people fighting against me, then I was on the right track. And so that got confirmed rather quickly. So there was 3 seats open. I made sure I didn't run alone. I had 2 colleagues that were willing to run as well for the district. They weren't as well known. I mean, obviously I had ran for 2 cycles, so I had built name recognition in the community. But I was still happy to have 2 colleagues to all of us try our very best for it. And almost instantly, I started getting, I saw one of our state legislators that I had previously run against. He's on the other side of the political aisle, but he started posting on his Instagram attacks against me, trying to label me as like far right extremist and whatnot. And I'm like, oh, okay.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you think the attacks were worse when you decided to run for school board than your 2 rounds of state house, or was this a similar experience?
Way worse.
For school board?
Yes.
How big? This is just so people understand, because in Florida, an entire county is a school district.
Yeah.
Like our school district here, 100 schools, 75,000 kids, 9,000 employees. That's a school district. But this school district you're running for is what size?
Oh my goodness. Right now, I believe we have like 11 schools that are going to be
11 schools. So compared to Florida or whatever, it's a small school district. You're not running for House or Senate in your state. You're literally running for a school board seat. Does it pay anything?
No.
It's a volunteer position in a tiny district. And you say the hate was and the attacks were way worse than running for state house twice.
Yeah.
Why, I wonder?
Because they knew I was going to win. That's why. They knew I was out there earning every single vote. So yeah, they sent mailers attacking me and my 2 colleagues. They called us the MAGA moms.
That's expensive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wonder where they got the money for that.
I don't know. I mean, I identified at least 5 organizations that were working against us, that were working for the 3 that were running on the other side. So
were the teachers unions? Could you identify?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The teachers unions. So it was kind of interesting.
So they were against you?
Oh yeah.
And all their money was
Yeah.
against you.
Yeah. And I did interviews with, with some of these groups to see,
Get their
and
support. I did
yeah.
the same thing when I ran. I interviewed with the teachers union.
Yeah, no, but they did not want to support me. They only wanted they wanted to support a party. They didn't want to support the individual. So yeah, they sent mailers, they sent text messaging. They even put yard signs
Against you?
Uh-huh.
Not supporting their candidates, but against you.
Well, the funny thing is, okay, I have to tell the sign debacle. This was funny. We designed 4-foot by 4-foot signs with all three of us. It had our names nice and big, very clear. It was pretty well designed. We did front and back. We only had 20 signs, and we installed them mostly in the medians in the district. And so people could see it. You could even see it at night. If you shined your car at it, you could see it at night. It's interesting to see how the others reacted. They ended up getting signs, bigger signs.
Oh, this is normal in most elections. Sign wars, right? And then
Yeah,
the
it was
signs
a
get
sign war.
stolen. I had one of mine like completely mowed down with cars, with a truck one time. One guy kept sawing them in half, clean cut all the way across. It's normal.
Yeah, so there was a sign war going on as well not as bad. They didn't really attack our signs. I mean, they'd have to go through traffic and risk getting run over. But yeah, so they did that. So what did they start doing to our signs? It was actually, I believe it was the teachers union or one of the teachers union affiliated groups. They made a red sign that said MAGA and an arrow, and they placed it next to our sign.
Oh, good grief.
Yeah, because and that's what they tried to use to attack us. And I'm like, that's not a reason why someone's not a good person on the school board. I'm like, obviously we want to make our education better, but
so what types of things did you do to campaign? And I think this is a good time to say that you used some resources and tools that Moms for Liberty provides on our website. You can go into Moms for Liberty under candidates, and we have a variety of things that people can use. Did you use any of Moms for Liberty resources or tools, the campaign kit? We have winning workshops around the country where we train people to run for school board. Did you attend any of those? Tell me more.
Yes. So that was one of the first things I actually did was I went to the candidate kit that is for free on Moms for Liberty. And I really enjoyed it because you see all these templates that are great themes and great colors for school board candidates. You download it onto Canva, and then from there, you just use the Canva toolkit, which is really simple for people who are not into graphic design. Canva is really the most simplified platform that you could use to make your own graphics, and you don't have to go spend money to get a graphic designer, and then you could go send it to a printer.
Yeah, because there's no money in running for school board. No consultants want to help you because they can't make $100,000. You raise, how much money did you raise in your campaign?
Roughly 10.
Which is a lot for some places. That's a lot. $10,000, not $10. I'm going to make it clear to everybody, $10,000. And so you use the campaign toolkit. Just so folks out there know, when I ran for school board, there was nothing. I Googled, this was 2015, I ran in 2016. I Googled, what does school board member do? There's nothing out there. How do you run for school board? Nothing out there. Who can help me run for school board? Nothing out there. It's a very different race than running for Senate or House or President or Congress. And so there was no tool. So we created this resource, which helps you know how many votes you need to win. It helps you know how much money you need to raise. It trains you how to talk to the media. There's all kinds of things in there. And so you enjoyed the Canva portion of making signs and such. And did you use that for your materials?
Yeah, I used that for our palm cards. And I did see that there was all that other information about what steps to take. Now, again, I had
already run.
Yeah, I had run twice, but I was seeing this all available to the candidates. I'm like, this is incredible. This is absolutely what we need for our candidates. And I know in Arizona, there's a ton of school districts where no one runs for.
It's terrible.
Yeah, from either side even. And so to have these resources available for free to help people in those instances, That's wonderful that Moms for Liberty does that. And I would really encourage anyone that is considering, even just considering the possibility of maybe running for office, to check out the campaign toolkit. And then also the workshops. We had one workshop as well in Arizona. I attended it, and that was great as well. And I know that there's way more workshops that Moms for Liberty offers.
Yeah, and people can go on our website and request. If you have a local chapter, reach out to them. We can put one together in your community. We'd like to have at least 10 people there, but we did one in Pennsylvania several months ago where we had almost 100 people there. I think 85 had registered, and even more showed up at the door. Because Pennsylvania has all their school board elections this year. They're on off years. So it's going to be a big year in PA. And so what things did you do to campaign? You've obviously made signs, you made palm cards. Were you a door knocker?
Absolutely. That is the number one. That is the number one thing. If you're not seen, if no one sees you, they have no reason to remember you. Right. And that, I think that's what made me stand out and why people voted for me. And it's interesting to see how the vote turnout came. I was the one that won out of, the three of us.
Hold on, you're jumping to the end of the story.
Yeah.
We're talking about how you campaign. Door knocking. We want to drive that home to listeners. If you want to run for any office, door knocking is the key to success.
Yeah.
What else did you do to campaign?
Going to community events, going to service projects, just be present. When I went to visit the school board, I'm not just there sitting as an audience member. I went and introduced myself to everyone that I could.
Yeah. You have to be a networker. You have to meet people. You have to be seen. You have to listen to people and their concerns if you really want to be a good public servant. Did you do mailers and texting? Did you have the funds to do any of that?
Yes, we did. We did texting. We did a little bit of mailers, mostly texting. We did a lot of phone banking too. I had a group of volunteers that helped me out with that. And I did the most amount of phone.
As you should as the candidate.
Yeah.
I mean, if candidates aren't willing to put in the blood, sweat, and tears to win, it's not going to work.
That is one of my favorite things to do, is actually to talk to a voter, me personally. And sometimes I feel like I'm a therapist, especially in our community, because everyone has something to share of why they want to see something change. If they want to see something change in the local public schools, if there's something with crime, whatever it was, I was there to listen. And so that's something that's really unique about me as a board member, is I have all this feedback that I've heard from families. And so I'm able to bring that into these conversations and make a difference.
I love it. And so election night happens.
Yeah.
Actually, back up one second. Were you endorsed by Moms for Liberty?
Yes.
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 So Moms for Liberty endorses school board candidates across the country. You can apply for an endorsement through your chapter or online. And then we have a Moms for Liberty PAC. Moms for Liberty Action is actually a super PAC. And so we couldn't coordinate with you. The PAC couldn't coordinate with you.
Yeah.
But the PAC was separate, and it also helped support you through text messaging and other things there in Arizona. And then election night happens, and we had races all across the country that we were endorsed in, and we're announcing all of our winners. And we check in with you, and we're like, Tatiana, we don't know what your numbers are. Did you win? And you say,
no.
I get the news that Tatiana did not win her race. And honestly, I was like, well, it was a really blue county. She fought hard, but I'm so sad that she lost, but not shocked. In my mind, I'm not shocked. And so that's election night. Yeah. And then next day, what happens?
I wake up the next day and I'm in third place for, there's 3 openings. I'm in third place. I'm like, okay.
Which means you may have won. You're like, I think I won. And so I get the message back that, no, we were wrong. We think Tatiana won. And I don't know why that's happened, but I'm like, what? Go back and find out, please find out. And so what happened there?
I had to sit on the edge of my seat and wait for days and weeks as Maricopa County continued to count the votes, because they take a very long time with counting.
Weeks. They took weeks. I mean, in Florida, we know within an hour who has won.
Yeah.
And I kept checking back with our political director, Erica, and saying, does Tatiana know yet? And at some point I checked in with you finally, and I'm like, what the heck? How come we don't know? And you're like, well, it's about 100 votes, but they still have to count 30,000 votes or something crazy.
And being on the bottom of the totem pole and the school board, I had no idea how many ballots were still we had school board races on there. So every day as they gave us the updates on the newest numbers, I would see it. And I would always stay just within a little window, still ahead of the fourth place person. Well, fast forward, I won by 937 votes. That was a difference.
Yeah, but what people don't know is yesterday she thought she won by 400 votes. And I said, we're going to talk about that. So can you go verify it? And she came in this morning and she said, I won by 937 votes. So it's changed from even when you looked at it a few months ago. It's still changing. So Maricopa, get your head out. Like, good grief. It's not that hard to count votes. They need to get their act together.
We need to have Florida style elections. That's what it is.
For sure. And so now you're sitting on the school board of where you taught, where you went to school, where your parents taught, where your whole heart, I feel like, has been your whole journey started in your passion to serve your community and help children learn to read. And how, first night on the school board, what's that like for you?
Humbling, extremely humbling. I was sitting there. There was so many community members, and we have a beautifully diverse community. I mean, just so many backgrounds, so many humble, loving people of different cultures. And sitting there on the dais, looking out at my community members, I felt so grateful that they picked me.
They're very blessed to have you. I hope they know that. But I'm guessing it's come with a tax.
Yeah.
Because they don't know what a blessing it is to have you leading, a volunteer position in a community that you are passionate about. What a huge blessing. Shame on them. That's what I got to say to them. Shame on you.
But I would say, though, that they have been absolutely embracing, though, a lot of the community members.
Good.
Because I don't feel like I've been labeled up there. I feel like they are coming with real concerns. And even though I'm the only one on the board that is conservative, I have made a huge impact. A lot of it happens in the background. But our district,
I think that's important to reiterate right now, because a lot of our people, not our people, a lot of people don't run. They're like, oh, it's a 5-7 board and everyone's radical liberal. What difference can I make as one? And I can testify to my school board and the impact of one voice and what I saw happen. And after I left, just me switching out with someone that was way more liberal and watching the whole district change with one vote. How does that happen? And so you can have impact for good or not if you choose as one person on the board. And so what types of things do you feel like you've had influence on? And what is the district doing now about reading?
So one of the main things is I help the district, take more of a position of don't send a message that you're blaming everyone else for the reasons why we are having the things. We have to take some more responsibility for what's been done in the past, right? And they have had that attitude, and so some of there was blame game before. There was, it was another school here. It was this is why we're losing students. It's like, no, it's because families are wanting to find better education, right? And of course, it also means taking responsibility and making the changes so that we can be a competitive district. So what are we doing now? We're doing better trainings. I know this summer there is a huge effort to train our teachers in phonics phonics literacy training. So they're using the science of reading, which is a great,
amazing.
Yeah.
And so how many years ago were you a teacher there?
Oh man, that was probably 15
years ago. You're a
Yeah.
teacher there. There's no phonics. How many years ago were you a student there?
Maybe like 30 years at this
30
point.
years
Yeah.
ago, giving away your age now.
Yeah.
So phonics 30 years ago, no phonics 15 years ago, no phonics the last 15 years, maybe more, we could probably assume. And now the science of reading and phonics is going to be introduced in the fall to the children in this school.
Yeah, they're doing a lot more efforts to train their teachers. It's also been kind of a mind shift in the environment in the district to take more, to be more responsible from every level. coming from the executive all the way down to the janitor, that we're not allowing any nonsense anymore in the district, because the district did have a lot of issues for many years, a lot of decisions that were not taking into account who you're representing and where that money's coming from. And so I do feel that they're being very responsible now. They're trying.
Good.
And I'm very proud of the work that we're doing in the district, and I'm hoping to see some good results.
I think you are going to see good results. It'll be interesting to see just after the first year of phonics for a full year, and definitely after 3 years, when those kindergartners get to their third grade testing level, to see what happens. And I have a feeling you're going to have a lot to be proud of in the work that you've done. And we are grateful to have you as part of Moms for Liberty, as a champion for parental rights, a champion for America, champion for these kids, these underserved kids in your community. What a blessing you are to Moms for Liberty. And so let's just close a little bit here with 2 questions. One, about being a joyful warrior. That's the term we use, and I think you embody that. Your whole story about your hearts on your toilet paper rolls, all the way through serving now as the only conservative on your school board and caring about the kids. What does it mean to you to be a joyful warrior?
Being a joyful warrior for me means that you're just staying strong no matter what, and you're smiling through it. And I could tell you firsthand, I've had experiences where it wasn't just people on the other side that were attacking me, but even people on my side that were attacking me. And it is challenging. It is challenging.
That's honestly some of the hardest parts, is when your own side is coming after you just as strong as the people that you expect it from.
Yeah, getting rejection, it can be really tough. And sometimes you're like, is this even worth it? But that's what
would you say to people that, is this even worth it? Because we've all been there.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing, is one thing I have to share is the reason why I got involved in this whole rabbit hole to begin with was because once I saw and I understood what was having an impact on my country, on my community, why things were a certain way, I couldn't just look away and just act like it was no big deal, or be like, someone else will take care of it, because I knew realistically, who is that someone else? So sometimes, life puts you in a position where you're observing and you're learning. And it's not a coincidence. It's because you're the person that has to do something about it. And so that's what being a joyful warrior is about. You're not going into battle because it's a walk through the park. You're going into battle. And you need to be strong, and you need to, just let those little things not be bigger than they really are. And remember what your focus is, and let that focus be the reason why you do what you do. At the end of the day, I do it because I love my family. At the end of the day, I do it because my family's being impacted either directly or indirectly. And that's my future, grandkids, their grandkids. That's why I do it.
And I think we will end on that strong, powerful note. She does it for the love of her family. And I think we all have respect for that. Thank you for joining us today for the Fire of Liberty show. I'm Tina Deskovich, CEO and co-founder of Moms for Liberty. We had a wonderful conversation with Tatiana Pena, our state ambassador in the great state of Arizona, mom of 5, school board member in her Title I school where she went to school and her parents taught. I think that was, thank you. Thank you for sharing your heart with us and coming all the way to Florida to share your story with us. I hope if you're not following us already, you'll go over to Apple or Spotify or iHeart, click follow, download the episodes, leave us 5 stars, comments of support, not like your 16,000 hat comments that you got. And we'll see you next week. Wednesday, 10 a.m. again. Thank you for joining us.